Hi there, I'm Peter Flint, and in this video we're going to talk through the music that you heard in the trailer for my Pianobook Artists instrument, the tape rooms. Okay, so to start with, in the bass we've got our patch Krill Errands. This is from the Pitch Shifted folder, and this is just playing a bass line. Just playing the root notes of each chord on the beat. I'm not winning any awards for composition in this one, but basically I've dialed in the attack, the hold, grain shape. This is a key instrument, so it's not actually looping the grains, you're just playing one grain per note, and this happens because the global envelope is all down at 0. I've punched up the saturation, dialed in the cutoff and the send effects just right to make this sweet little bass. This is joined later on by another pitch shifted patch. This is Shoreline Remembers. Again, it's a key instrument. Everything in the global envelope is at 0 and the grain shape is dialed in just right. I've punched up the saturation, brought down the cutoff a bit so it sits better in the mix, dialed in the send effects, and we've got a small amount of random start here to give a little bit of variation, kind of gives a false round robin. Next we have this sidechain bass, which is the patch Pylons from the Overdriven folder. Complete with just a full-on wrong note right here, just a big old mistake there. Nothing wrong with that. This has got just a logic compressor on it. It's sidechained to the kick patch, which we'll get to a bit later. And as with the others, we've just dialed in the patch a little bit. I'm actually controlling, I've automated the cutoff here. It's got the MIDI automation from the modulation wheel, which is usually tied to the start point in these patches, but here I've tied it to the cutoff to give a bit of a performance with this instrument. To get the proper pumping sidechain effect, I've brought down the release of this so that each note changes exactly on the beat, and the hold and the decay are brought down a little bit as well so that one note doesn't bleed into the next. Then we've got our actual synth lead for this track. This is the patch Very Alarming. It's also from the Overdriven folder. I've brought down the saturation and the cutoff a little bit again so it sits better in the mix. Punched up the sends, got a bit of release on it because it's got some really interesting stuff happening in the releases of each of these notes. Next, we've got these kind of risers that are being played at the Unstable Supersaw lead patch. This is also in the Overdriven folder. What I've done with this is actually some work in the stereo and pitch tab here in the advanced section. I've brought up the random pan knob, brought down the key position knob, and actually punched up the random pitch knob. And when you combine that with a really kind of dry, sort of high presence instrument, it gives this really cool invasion of space effect. And then similarly, these risers are mixed in with this Laughing Chips patch. This is from the Grains folder again. As you can hear, I've brought the sends all the way down, brought the release way down. I've cut the grain kind of short here, so it sounds really kind of dry and up close. This one I've not doing so much random panning because it's kind of trying to mix in a bit with the Unstable Supersaw patch. Next we've got the Derbyshire patch, named for Delia Derbyshire, one of the key influences on this sample library. It's just this really cool, kind of creeping, really analog sounding pad that we've got going on here. And so I've got a lot of attack going on in the grain shape, a lot of decay as well, so each grain really flows from one into the other. Attack on the envelope as well, and plenty of sends going on into the convolution, plate reverb, and delay. Yeah, I really love the sound of that one. And then we've got Fingal's Cave here, which is an ARP. In this patch, the grain length has been synced to the host tempo, and it's got quite a short attack on the grain, as well as on the envelope itself. I've kind of cut out the attack and release and made a really kind of just a rectangular envelope. Yeah, so this is kind of making an ARP. It's got this low random start value and this punchy envelope. Really gives like an old school digital kind of feel to it. And that's bringing in loads of really great texture here in combination with the Derbyshire patch. So I've got them kind of panned against each other a little bit. Not quite in sync from one phrase to the next. Then we've got two patches that are kind of giving us beds. You can see we've just got really long held MIDI notes. The first is Distant Dockyards. And as you can see, I'm kind of performing the sample by playing the start value with the mod wheel, and that's been automated into the session here. And then I've got a really long attack, really long decay in the grains, so they're really kind of blending together as I scrub through this sample, which is quite kind of sparse and has a few different textures to it. But it really gives a sense of a kind of sonic landscape that I really like. And then we've got Dunes, which is a bit closer to a pad than Distant Dockyards, but it's doing something very similar here. Again, really long attack, really long decay in the grains, performing it with the start value tied to the mod wheel here. Then we've got some interesting patches that I've kind of played with quite a lot to create these bubble drum sounds. This is Lobster Talk. It's a patch in the tape loops folder. This is one of the original unedited tape loops, and you can see that I've moved the start value to this point here where it's kind of, there's a pop. That's the actual cut point of this tape loop. I've got no random start going on. I've got the loop length synced to the tempo. I've got a grain shape that I've dialed in here. No attack or really anything going on in the global envelope, just sustaining it. And yeah, it sounds like this. As you can hear, it's also it's got some stuff going on in Logic here. I've got 2 tracks of this exact same Lobster Talk patch, and it's got a sweeping auto filter going over it to make these kind of bubbly beats. But that's one of the really cool things you can do with this library, is that you can just scrub through to an interesting point in the sample, like here, and you can use this pop, this cut point in the tape loop, as a kick, which is something that I've done in this track as well. Here I've synchronized it at a longer value to the host tempo, but it's doing much the same thing as that previous Lobster Talk track. So this is just playing back the cut point of the tape loop every beat. And I've dialed in the cutoff a little bit, so you're not getting so much of that high end. I've also saturated it a little bit. But it's really punchy and cool. Now we're getting into a couple of tracks where I've imported my own samples, as this is the point in the trailer where it mentions on the screen that you can load your own samples. And so I've dropped in a snare drum here. This is from my MS-20 drums sample pack that's also on Pianobook, and it's free. So you can see again, I've set the start point to a place within the sample, synchronized the length to my project tempo at 2 30-second notes, again, taken out all of the randomness so it just plays on the beat, shaped the grain, and I'm really doing not a whole lot else. I think I'm automating the filter cutoff with the mod wheel again. And here I've done another one. It's a very similar patch, but I've brought in a field recording of a bus shelter that I sat in a gale once, and it made a lot of really interesting sounds. And here, obviously, I'm automating the mod wheel again, getting the sample start point to move around and kind of performing it a bit more so that I can match the kind of tension and release that's in the track. Then we've got the kick that I mentioned earlier. I've also got one here with a piano key. This appears at the start of the trailer because I needed something to match this little bit of footage here. And so this is a recording of my parents' piano here in Leicestershire. And with this, I've actually automated the length of each grain using the mod wheel, and I've sort of started at a low length, and automated down to a longer length. Kind of creating this wind down sound. Again, I've taken all of the randomness out. I've just shaped the grain a bit, just using sustain here, really. Then we've got this riser that kind of happens in the middle of the track. These are instruments that I've not edited a whole lot. They're mainly just the original presets. So here's Cargo Container. Wow, that's really quiet. Now we've got Scanners. Just kind of doing a bit of a dive bomb sound. I've brought down the cutoff and the saturation, and I'm just using the pitch bend to create a kind of transition there. Now we've got Reversed Memories. This is in the Echoes folder. This creates a really cool effect for transitions like this. It's got a really long attack on all of the grains and a really short decay, so it creates that kind of swooping sound. Now we've got the Driftwood patch. And again, that's kind of rising in the automation. These are doing a big kind of crescendo up into the next section. Now we've got voice bubbles. This is in the Overdriven folder, and I've actually brought in a sample from a different patch into this one in an interesting kind of turn of events. You can definitely replicate this patch in the Voice from Below patch. I'm not 100% sure why I did that. I think I was just really up against a deadline for this one. And now we've got the Something's Humming pad. Again, it's doing kind of a dive bomb. And then the last sound that we hear is actually my favourite sound in the whole library. It's Sneaky Birds. And you can see that I've had to fade it out a bit just because the video was coming to an end. So that's all of the patches that you hear in the trailer for Tape Rooms. I hope that you enjoyed this video. I'm going to put a link to this Logic session in the description of this video because that's something that's been requested. But I hope that you find a lot of cool ways to play around with this instrument. And so I hope that you enjoy this library, and I hope you enjoy this video. Thanks for watching.